Good afternoon, everyone. We are excited to welcome you to today's event, Community Conversations, a look inside the annual March Mammal Madness tournament. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Please share your questions in chat with the option for everyone. Someone might have the same question. Thank you for attending, and I will now pass the presentation to Jennifer Duvernay, who will share the ASU Library Indigenous Land Statement.
Good afternoon. The ASU Library acknowledges the 22 Native nations that have inhabited this land for centuries. Arizona State University's 4 campuses are located in the Salt River Valley on ancestral territories of Indigenous peoples, including the Acapulco and Peepash Indian communities, whose care and keeping of these lands allows us to be here today. ASU Library acknowledges the sovereignty of these nations and seeks to foster an environment of success and possibility for Native American students and patrons. We are advocates for the incorporation of Indigenous knowledge systems and research methodologies within contemporary library practice. ASU Library welcomes members of the Acapulco and Peepash and all Native nations to the library. Good afternoon. My name is Jenny Duvernay, and I am delighted to welcome all of you to this very special edition of the Community Conversation series, A Look Inside the March Mammal Madness tournament. I know we're all excited to learn more about the tournament, how to get the brackets, how to fill them out, how to get information in order to fill them out and pick your winners for this year's combatants. It is my pleasure to introduce today's conversationalist who's going to help us all get started. Anali Maughan Perry is the Scholar Communication Librarian at ASU Library. In this role, she leads efforts to provide outreach and education to the ASU community regarding scholarly publishing and copyright, with particular emphasis on fair use, open access to scholarly information, and open education. She also manages the March Mammal Madness Library Guide and has only successfully chosen the March Mammal Madness champion once. And she put in here, go #TeamRedKangaroo. I believe that's a fairly recent winner. Annalise joined today by Katie Hinde, who's an associate professor in the School of Human Evolution and Social Change and the Center for Evolution and Medicine at Arizona State University. Katie studies maternal and infant health with a focus on lactation in humans, monkeys, and other mammal species. And in 2013, she created the March Mammal Madness Science Outreach Campaign and has continued to serve as editor-in-chief as it has grown to an incredible team of scientists, illustrators, conservationists, educators, librarians, designers, and performers to reach hundreds of thousands of players every year. Katie and Annalie, welcome. Please, I'm handing this over to you.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. We're really excited for this community conversation, and thank you everybody for making time to come and be here with us today.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see so many people, and I love to see so much engagement in the chat. I know Katie and I are both, we love multitasking, so you're probably going to see us like looking at chat, looking at the camera throughout. I've got a second monitor here, so if you see me staring this way, looking at all the things that are going on. So Katie, do you want to talk a little bit to start? Do you want me to jump right in?
So I think I'll just kind of say we're going to go over some of the key things that we're seeing people ask about on Facebook and Twitter and emails, stuff like that. So we're going to go over some of the key mechanics of how the game is played, how you get information, how you do research for your brackets, and our goal is to kind of get through some of this stuff pretty quickly so that we can open up questions and answer your questions in the chat. It's great to have so many attendees, and so we're going to do our best to answer them. The ones that don't get answered, we're going to download the chat at the end of this and then insert our answers and get it up on the LibGuide. So spoiler alert, the LibGuide is your hub for everything. I'm going to let Anali lead most of the tour through the LibGuide because it's, she is the resident doyen of the LibGuide. But just if you learn nothing else today, which you'll learn many other things, but if you learn nothing else, learn to bookmark the LibGuide. It is basically Grand Central Station for March Mammal Madness.
All right, so I am going to share my screen here, hopefully, with how the Zoom is. So does everybody see the LibGuide on their screen?
Yes.
Yes.
I will drop a link into it in the chat in case people wanted to open it up and follow along.
Absolutely.
But also, this is being recorded, so you'll be able to come visit it again. But here's the chat.
Yes. So this is the headquarters for March Mammal Madness. Everything that you need to know about the tournament is going to be on the library guide. It may link elsewhere. There's a few other portals that you can download content or see other things for March Mammal Madness, but the library guide is really the #1 place to go. So I'm just going to walk through a couple key places that are important for people to remember about the library guide, and then we will talk more about some details about the tournament. So here on this main page, the how to play page has just kind of the main information about the tournament that basically stays the same each year. So it's a good place to go when you just want to get an overview and see what's going on, what the tournament is, a little bit about how the play happens, and then information about the March Mammal Madness team, which we've talked has grown to nearly 50 people donate their time and volunteer to be part of this group. The page that you're going to be most interested in perhaps today is the 2022 MMM page. So you can see on the library guide, there's some tabs off to the left. You can use those to navigate to different places. Here on the 2022 page, there's also these links to different boxes. So you can jump right down instead of just having to scroll all the time. So here we have an introduction to the 2022 tournament slide deck, which has been shared on Twitter and is part of some other things that you can look at it just right here. Some stuff about the educator materials. New educators, you can still sign up because that information comes to Katie, and we use that to help talk specifically about how many educators are using March Mammal Madness in their classrooms and how many students. So it's just kind of a data collection point for us. Our events. And then down here we have the bracket. So for those of you asking, where do I get the bracket? Here's where you get the bracket. You could just click right here to get the bracket, but there's a few other options. There's a whole packet with a variety of different bracket files, a screen reader enabled bracket, the self-scoring bracket in Google Sheets, which is fantastic, and a contest manager, which I use for our internal ASU library March Mammal Madness pool. And then the educator packet here. And then, of course, if you keep scrolling down, you can see the tournament schedule and download a calendar link, and then also a screen reader enabled calendar. So you can see that right here on this page is pretty much everything you need in one place for participating in March Mammal Madness, whether you're just playing on your own, whether you're an educator or a teacher sending it to your students, or if you're a student and you just want to do it on your own. And I think the last thing, oh yeah, the other thing that we need to make sure to go over here with the library guide is the animal background information. This is where you're going to want to go to research your choices for the winner. I mean, you can just go off your gut. You can pick who's cutest. You can pick whoever you want, but there's going to be some creatures you might not know what they are. I know that I'm not entirely sure what a therapsid is.
Well, this is actually a key thing too. is that we have the common names bracket, but then if you want to know the very specific species, which is useful for something like a therapsid, which is a huge group of pre-mammals, then you can go and look at the Latin binomials bracket, and that will give you the official scholarly biological name of the species. And we also have a link to a data sheet that has the common name, the Latin binomial, and then some other fun facts about it that are going to be relevant for this year's tournament. So for example, the Wild North America division, all the species that are featured there are tied to specific public lands within North America, mostly in the US, but not all. And so there might be variation across populations, or aspects of their ecosystems are going to be different depending on which particular public land they're on.
That's a very new kind of wrinkle to the tournament this year.
We always have wrinkles. And
We have to add those.
Do your research. The casual, some other things, well, actually I'm ahead of it. We'll come back. We'll talk about divisions. We'll talk about habitats after we finish the first part of this tour.
Right. And I'll just take one more minute here on this background information page. You can see these resources K to 12 is kind of grouped out among kind of some general resources, some stuff about specific regions, including the US national parks, individual species resources, some image and video collections for educators. All of these sources have been selected and curated by other librarians here at ASU, as well as some suggestions from teachers. And so they're going to be good places to go to get some reliable and free information. We also have an academic information resources, which is kind of geared more towards the college age and professional researcher section or audience, I suppose. We have some academic journals, some links to open access journal publishers that specialize in animals, life sciences, mammalogy, and that kind of stuff. So that is really all about this.
Yeah, and real quickly, Anali, we have a question from Neil Cashman in the chat, and he's asking, can he give this link to his students to help with their research? And the answer is yes, absolutely. One of the really great things about the LibGuide is it has the .edu URL, so it doesn't tend to get blocked by schools that might have safety measures on student use of computers. And this curation of reliable, well-sourced, factual information about not just the animals in the tournament, but animals all over the world. It's a really great place to get students used to understanding the ways in which libraries aren't just repositories of knowledge, but curators of information, and can be really valuable for doing research and finding things. And these LibGuides are phenomenal. So it's amazing what Anali and other librarians at ASU have been doing to support participation in the research for the tournament.
Yeah, and to be honest, Neil, we made this library guide and this list with your students in mind, because we know how hard it is I know I've got a 10-year-old, and like trying to get him to focus on a place to go for research is something else. I think that's all I have to share about the library guide right this second, so I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, great. And the stuff I'm going to tell you about is available on the How to Play and the 2022 portal within the LibGuide. So you don't have to memorize it from me just at this exact moment. And so a couple things. This year we are featuring we always have 4 divisions. And they're not regionally oriented. We put them together to kind of create different themes or scientific principles. And the divisions this year are Mammal Collectives, Wild North America, Queens of the Sea and Sky, and what we're calling Why Not Both? So let's start with the Mammal Collectives. These, this is a quirk of the English language. It's not in every language, but it's in the English language. And it dates back at least 500 years. You can actually go and read the Book of St. Albans online. And it had a list of kind of collective nouns for different groups of people or animals. And so the terms that we're fairly familiar with, like pride of lions or a murder of crows, are actually written down in this book over 500 years ago. Now, the thing that's, I think, particularly interesting about mammal collectives is that these terms can be applied to species that aren't actually social, that don't live in social groups. So we have mammal collectives on this bracket that are going to vary in whether or not they're socially living or cooperatively socially living. So as you or your students or your friends or family or coworkers are doing your research for your bracket, you definitely want to take advantage of our spreadsheet, because we highlight whether or not they're social or typically solitary. If they are typically solitary, then what we'll be featuring in the upcoming battles is what happens when they are together in March. So they might come together for mating season. They might come into social groups to rear young. They might form kind of bachelor groups during not the mating season. They might only encounter each other when they're having territorial defense or having a fight over a carcass or something. And in which case, it could be that those two individuals are as likely to fight with each other as they will the other combatants in the tournament that we have set up for them to battle. So Mammal Collectives is a space where we can think about the ways in which language may not necessarily reflect natural history. Wild North America is celebrating protecting and stewarding North America's ecosystems, and is going to feature a combatant from a specific population in national parks, conservation areas, national forests, or other kinds of protected lands. And we have several curricula lesson plans that are oriented toward this, one of which is going to get posted tomorrow because we ran a little bit behind getting that out the door in time for the educator packet to go out. Queens of the sea and sky are going to be species that are adapted to either flight or marine or other kinds of aquatic habitats. And they're also going to be species in which the female of the species is characterized as being bigger, faster, more knowledgeable, or just in some way particularly adept. And this is a way to kind of counteract some of the things that have led us, because males are more likely to engage in contest competition. We've featured a lot of male mammals, and this is a place where we're going to say, you know, there is a lot of really amazing variation across the animal kingdom, and let's talk a little bit more about the ladies. Why Not Both is a selection of taxa of different species that have atypical combinations of traits and adaptations. So you can think about how the pangolin has both scales and fur, or the muntjac has both tusks and antlers. And when we go to feature those species in the play-by-plays by the scientist narrators, we'll kind of talk about why these animals have these atypical combinations of traits. Now, another thing that's important to understand about the mechanics of the tournament is that habitat really matters. And in the first 3 rounds, so round 1, round 2, and the Sweet 16, the animal that has the better seed, which is lower, closer to 1 is better, gets to have this encounter between combatants in their own home habitat. We're calling this home habitat advantage. And so it's not just about the traits that the animal has, but how those traits are going to be functioning within the particular habitat of the encounter. Once we get out to the final 3 rounds of the tournament, the elite trait, the final roar, and the championship, the battle location is randomly selected from 4 possible habitats. These are montane forest, kelp forest, savanna, and sea ice. So as you're thinking about your elite trait species, those 8 animals, you can think about to what extent different habitats may or may not give them an advantage. And this is part of the contingency and integrative complexity that playing the tournament stimulates. So there's a kind of rundown of some of the key mechanics to keep in mind as you are planning out who you think is going to advance and who you think is going to depart the field of battle. Oh, that's one other thing to mention. These animals, obviously, the imaginary animals in our simulated tournament, don't know that they are in any kind of battle. This is not Thunderdome where it's 2 animals enter, 1 animal leaves. It is more about what would these animals do if they were to encounter each other in a particular setting in March, in the condition that they are in March. And so sometimes they will fight, but other times they may not. And what happens in one round can potentially narratively play forward in the story. Now, keep in mind that the outcomes are determined probabilistically by some of the scientists on the team. But as we tell you about those outcomes, we craft evidence-based narratives into a play-by-play, and the LibGuide has links to example play-by-plays to kind of see what's happening. And we try and keep this variable. We don't want to have the same story over and over and over again. That would get quite boring and would not be accurate. So instead, we talk about all sorts of different ways that animals may engage or not engage in natural settings. All right, back to you, Anali.
We've got a lot of questions that I think we can address a little bit, because it ties in about what we've been talking about, how the tournament works together. So several questions about where things are. Pretty much everything's on the library guide. The locations for the 4 random habitats that will be in the elite trait, the final roar, and the championship are on the 2022 MMM page. I always love that the animals don't know. Like, this isn't a Pokemon battle. The narrators are not like, Nimravid, I choose you. go fight. So it is always really funny that sometimes they're just like sort of together in a meadow, and then they wander off in other directions. But the narrators always do a really great job of
It's a
pulling
story.
the story together and making it interesting.
Yeah, we'll tell you a story, and it's always evidence-based. And so even improbable outcomes are situated within what we know about animals in the wild or in other kinds of natural settings.
So, and there's some questions about whether or not the animals are assumed to be adults or not. And normally the assumption is that they are assumed to be kind of at their peak.
Yes.
We don't normally have infant or immature creatures participating.
So so typically, so imagine as you were sitting at your bracket, the same way we estimate the probability outcomes. You imagine a prime condition adult, or sometimes it depends on which life stage is best at battling. In some insects, larvae are really dangerous, and then the adult version is not as dangerous. So less of an issue. We only have one insect combatant this tournament. But for the collectives division, when we think about the collectives, it could be if moms have babies, then they will be along because they're part of the collective. Now, are they going to be an asset in whatever's happening? It's not clear. In some species, the presence of young actually increases parental aggression and defensiveness to protect the young. So it might actually increase a probability of a battle, but it might, depending on the species and their traits, their behavioral traits in these kinds of settings, they might encourage them to run away or go hide in a burrow or a den or something like that. So, and which counts as a forfeit. Withdrawing from the field of battle is not a win, and that species does not advance.
Right.
Right.
So we're going to talk a little bit about how you find out what happens later. So here's,
real quickly, this is coming up over and over and over and over and over everywhere. Yes, there will be a crowdsourced Google form. We're going to have it go live tomorrow. Been a little busy this week. Stuff's been happening. And we also need to give teachers the time to actually create their resources. So the crowdsourced teacher resource form will go live tomorrow. Teachers can put their information in, and we'll have it published live to the web so that people can go and see what resources are available. We have had to kind of rethink the constellation of how things are getting released and on what schedule. We prioritize the things that are that take the most lead time to prepare and the most kind of atypical skill set. So video editing and trading cards and auto scoring brackets, just because these represent kind of atypical skill sets. And so we'll have, in terms of crowdsourcing things, so everybody's not duplicating the same efforts, that's going to go live tomorrow.
Great. So here are, we're getting several questions from teachers. So I'm gonna share screen again and show y'all a couple of things. So on the library guide, if you go to the 2022 MMM page and go to the 22 MMM bracket and educator materials, if you scroll down here, there's a pro tips for educators file, which explains about all of the materials that the March Mammal Madness team has prepared. And then there's also a link to the educator materials packet, which has all of the components that are listed here, and you can download those to use them. So those are the materials that the March Mammal Madness team has prepared. What Katie was talking about with the crowdsourced file is that there's a lot of folks who like to prepare their own things and historically have wanted to share them with others. So that's the, sometimes those are different slide decks, sometimes those are different lesson plans. And so that'll be going up tomorrow, the form for that. While I have the library guide open, when we're talking about how to find results, there's a few different ways to get the results. So the first way is the evening of the battle that's on the calendar that we have here. That'll take place on Twitter. Now we know that, that's at 8 p.m. Eastern time. That's 5 p.m. often here in Arizona. And like I'm eating dinner at that time. So, not everybody can participate live on Twitter. So the next morning, results will get posted on the library guide, on Facebook, and the MC Marmot rodent roundtable. On the library guide, if you look on the library guide where it says 2022 MMM results, that'll be the page that the results will get posted to. So that'll have a sports summary of the battle. It will have an archived wakelet of all of the tweets, and it will also have the video from MC Marmot. Now that's posted as soon as I get up the next morning. So there may sometimes be delays, especially for those of you who might be on the East Coast.
Yeah, and I know you just kind of went through explaining this, but we're getting a lot of questions about like, what is this? What is this tournament? How does it work? There's a team of 15 scientist narrators that a subset of us estimate what the outcomes are going to be, who advances, who exits stage left, and then starting on March 14th, and then on the calendar of the subsequent dates, we basically present an empirical story about what could have happened as though it's happening in real time, as though we're watching it. And this is live tweeted like the exciting days of radio. We do this on Twitter because we can link to the empirical research, we can link to videos, we can include images, we can add alt text for people that are using screen readers. It really allows us a lot of options for bringing the science into the story, more so than TikTok or Instagram or just writing it like a story in text, in part because there are hundreds of people that watch this happen live, like it's a sporting event. There's cheering, there's shouting, there's trash talk, there's a lot of suspense. The scientist narrators use a lot of words that are sound effects that don't make it clear what's happened. And so there's actual suspense. And this is part of what makes the tournament so emotionally engaging to people that are following. And so those are then summarized. So you can watch it live and you can be there for the 2 hours of action and the commercial intermission, which is a statement about responsible environmental stewardship. And then that's the live event. That's the party. That's how you get most involved and interact most with the scientists and other members of the community. Now, not everybody wants to do that, as Anali said, especially if you're on an East Coast time zone, as Anali said. But that's where the main event happens. And all of it, you can either read those play-by-plays, so you can get all usually 250 tweets of the scientific stories, or you can read a 1-paragraph sports summary that's written by a mix of scientists and sports writers, or you can watch the MC Marmot summary video, which is is the briefest and is known for their extreme rodent bias. And so you can decide whether or not you want to think of the tournament as like a river, and you can wildly belly flop into the middle of that river and watch the things happen live, or you can wade along the tangled bank, or you can just watch the MC Marmot videos. You have different levels of immersion into the experience. And then there's people that do all 4 of those, that are there for the live play-by-plays, that read the summaries, that love the Marmot videos. And it just depends on what level of engagement you want to jump into.
Right, and I'm gonna show, this is last year's results page, which I think helps demonstrate what you'll see. If on the 2021 page, this is the wild card. Here is the archived play-by-play of all of the tweets. And that always takes a little while to load. And that is not ASU, I just want to say. That is a Wakelet thing.
Yeah, and before it was Wakelet, it was Storify, and then Storify ended up canceling. It stopped existing, and so we had to migrate all of the archive over to Wakelet. And so that's another thing worth mentioning. All of this is done by an all-volunteer army. We have no budget. We all do it because it's our gift to our communities. Because we love nature, we love science, we love learning, and we love bringing people together to celebrate those things. So we make use of whatever kinds of platforms and resources are part of open resources. And sometimes we have to pivot. Sometimes things change. Sometimes there's all sorts of unexpected things that can happen, and we all just roll with it, because being adaptable and flexible is one of the hallmarks of our human species.
Right. So here's a sports summary for last year's wildcard, and then here's the video. So you can see all 3 pieces are included on the library guide, and we'll post that as soon as they're available, either late the night of the battle or early the next morning. Okay, so that's how we get the results. And it's already 3:32. Are there?
I think we should go to the lightning round and then open it up for more questions. What do you think?
Okay, I think that sounds good to me. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think you should go first for lightning round this time, because I did it first last time.
Are you ready for your lightning round questions, Anali?
Well, we have a question. So the lightning round, for those of you who are just joining us, you can type questions in the chat. After we're done with the lightning round, we will answer your questions. The lightning round is Katie and I just asking each other questions.
Yeah, so every time I have to do these kinds of things, I always have a lightning round, because academics and scholars and librarians and librarian scholars and librarian scientists, all of us, we tend to kind of answer things very slowly and comprehensively. It gets kind of boring. And so to mix that up, we have a lightning round where the person has to answer very quickly, and we get to sneak in kind of questions that we might not generally ask each other while we're working on our stuff at our university. So, but the first one's kind of boring. Just to warm you up, we're going to start. It's like a kiddie pool transition question. So this is a very straightforward one. Anali, when and how did you know you wanted to be a scholarly communication librarian?
That's an interesting question. I started getting really interested in copyright as I got to the end of my music career. And scholarly communication was really just starting to kick off in librarianship when I went to library school. And I was really interested because copyright it's a big part of that. So it was the job that was posted when I graduated. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then I really discovered that it really became my passion. So I guess the story is like, sometimes you don't always know what you want to be when you grow up until you're doing it.
I think that's a great lesson. All right. The rest of my questions have to do with animals.
Okay.
All right. What 2022 combatant are you really excited about?
The embarrassment of pandas.
Okay.
Worst bear forever.
Okay. Worst bear, worst herbivore has Anali's vote. All right. In any of the past MMM tournaments, which animal combatant defeat made you the most irate?
The most irate.
Come on.
Well, I really wanted Team Bad Yodi, the badger and coyote, to win. I was like really invested in that, and the fact that they like kind of surrendered, wandered off. I was very sad at that.
They
I was
had
sure
just
they were
eaten
going
a
to make
meal. They ate a big meal the day before, and the gut passage time left them unmotivated to battle. And the mongoose and the warthog, Team War Goose,
who you have right behind you there, like rubbing it in.
I actually have. Sorry, the fox is a stand-in for coyote, and then I've got my badger, and then I've got war goose. It's almost like we're recreating that very battle.
Yeah.
All right. What are the top 3 animals you've seen in the wild?
The top 3 animals I've seen in the wild. Like the most often, or that I was most excited about?
I know you hate the question, what's your favorite? So I'm asking it, but with different words. You were stoked to see in the wild, like I just saw it.
Well, I was pretty excited one time, not in the wild, but it was, I was riding my bike to work and I saw a coyote in a field, like off, and that was really cool because I do love coyote. I know I'm not rooting for them I mean, I am rooting for them, but that was really exciting to see a coyote. And I love it when I see snakes. I know some friends don't, but when I go hiking and we see, not rattlesnakes, but one time I was hiking, there was like a whole ball of snakes, like a ball of them, like all on a rock. And that was way cool.
That is very cool.
And then I saw an osprey one time at the lake, and it was very fun to see it like fly.
Look at you pick a bird, a mammal, and a reptile for your top 3 animals. Well done. All right. And then if you could see any animal in the wild, what would you want to see?
In the wild?
Living or fossil?
Oh my gosh. What would be? There's some great answers in the chat. Maybe I'll take one of those. I would love to see, and maybe this is cliche, but I would really love to see dolphins in the wild. I mean, I'm never at the ocean. I've been to SeaWorld, but like being like in, like seeing them where they belong, that would be pretty incredible.
Very cool. Yeah, I saw a pod of dolphins once in Indonesia as I was walking to the beach to swim, but only 2 of them were there. So it looked like a dorsal fin and a tail fin of like what would have been a 15-foot tiger shark. And I was near tiger shark waters and I was like, oh, and then the rest of the dorsal fins came up and I was like, oh, pod of dolphins, that is also very cool. All right, so those were your 5 questions. Well
that
done.
was 5. All right. All right. Are you ready?
I am ready. I am ready.
Okay. Okay, so Katie, if you were like, an athlete, what would be your entrance theme song?
It would be Timber. It would be Timber. And of course, right now I'm like completely blanking on the artist out of Miami. Because that music video is ridiculous. They've got like Caribbean islands and cowboys and yeah, it would be timber.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Kesha and Pitbull. Thank you, Martha and Sue Ann. Thank you.
See, the chat's got us covered. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so how do you like to celebrate achievements? Do you have like a ritual?
Milkshake. It's a milkshake. You go and you get a chocolate milkshake, or I get a chocolate milkshake at whatever your favorite milkshake flavor. And this is something I actually learned from a scientist narrator, Josh Drew, from way back in the day. And it was, you celebrate with a milkshake. And then Professor Michelle Klein, whenever she gets a disappointment, her tradition is to go and have like a really nice breakfast, right? Because breakfast is something you usually eat at home. And so like if you get bad news, at least you got like a really fun breakfast out of it. And so I was like, I'm adopting both of these things, milkshakes to celebrate, and sometimes milkshakes when I'm disappointed or going out to breakfast.
Right. Yeah, I like that. Okay. What location is on your bucket list to visit that you have not yet visited?
Yes. Yeah. So my bucket list place is Svalbard, which is a sub Arctic island that's co-managed by Russia and Norway. And so I would really like to go up there. They have a whole bunch of polar bears and Arctic terns, and it's a pretty incredible place of nature that is quickly slipping away.
Okay. I didn't mean for that to take a dark turn.
No, this is an important thing. Like,
yeah.
I think about like, if you go, next year versus 10 years, you're going to different places.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do 2 more questions. We're almost there. I know we got lots of questions. So what has surprised you the most about March Mammal Madness?
Oh, it's longevity and how it's expanded. Like when I created the first bracket in 2013 as kind of like a fun exercise with my lab on a Friday afternoon before departmental happy hour, and was like, I'm gonna do this really silly hype video and put it on my blog and share it on Twitter. And like, in 2013, Twitter was a different kind of place, and it felt like a really small science community, and so I tossed it up, and like and people were super into it, and like to the point where I was actually scheduled for spring break to go to the Kalahari and pilot work with meerkats. And like all of a sudden I had this like group of people that wanted me to tell them about what was going on with animal battles, and like the internet was terrible out in the Kalahari. And so the only time that I could actually tweet stuff out and that people be awake was like in the middle of the night. So I'd stay up until 2 a.m. tweeting out battles, and then have to wake up at 5:30 to go be at the like opening to dens of meerkats at sunrise. And I remember like my flight out of Johannesburg was like it was delayed, and I was like, that's great. It gives me time to write like the semifinal battle. And so like at the end of that year, everybody's like, all right, see you in 2014. And I was like, I can't do this by myself. And recruited Christy, Josh, and Chris, who've been like the most engaged that first year. And so we did it. And then like at the end of that year, like Karen Henning wrote to us, and she'd been interacting with us the entire tournament. And it turns out that she was a tattoo artist, and all the tattooists would go to the pub next door after a night's battles, or after they got done working, and they drink and watch the battles. And she wrote to me and was like, hey, would you be interested in us doing art of the combatants? And it was like, yes. And then the genetics team started, and then like American Society of Mammalogists, and Anali, you came to my office and you were like, I mean, the blog's great, but have you thought about a live guide? and so like the thing that I love about our community so much is that like people are in, and they are in and care about it to an extent that they bring their talents and their joy and their celebration, and everybody that comes and joins like makes it better, makes it bigger, makes it reach more people. And I mean, like everybody that's here, like, we had unexpectedly like huge technical problems with educators getting access to the materials when they went live this week. And like, it was very stressful for everyone, and people were trying really hard, but like every message I got was so kind. It was like, hey, I'm so excited, but I'm having a hard time getting materials. Or, you know, people were like, it was taking a long time to get in, so I decided to use this time to make a hike video. Or like, it's just like, it's the loveliest community, which has been really, really good, especially during the pandemic, especially in times of turmoil. Like, to know that there is this vibrant, wonderful, caring, celebratory community that also loves to give into trash talk and have a lot of fun. And like, to me, like, I had no idea that this is how this would grow and evolve and develop. And it's like, it's been like the great honor of my life to have been the like initial spark for what is now something that is bigger than any of us. And I love it.
Yeah. Well, you kind of anticipated my next question. So what is the number one thing that you want our MMM fans to remember as we head into the tournament?
That they should bookmark the LibGuide.
All right.
Oh, and then, so one, you should bookmark the LibGuide. And then two, the number one thing that I always want everyone to remember about March Mammal Madness or anything, if you are learning, you're winning. That's, and like, even when we make mistakes, even when we fall down, even when we don't do things that are just as we want them to be, we learn something from that. And if we take that learning to heart, if we grow from it, then we are winning. We're not always going to win right out of the gate. We sometimes have to learn, and then we win. And I think that is a really, really important life lesson. And I hope, you know, as you pick your champion, like 64 of these species are not going to be the champion. Only one of them. But all through this process, we hope you learn, we hope you find out new things, we hope you get a chance to think about how amazing nature and animals and ecosystems are. And anytime that you have learned something, you just put that right in the win column.
Absolutely. I was prepared for you to say that. Learning is winning.
Like, LibGuide, yeah, that's all I care about. Just bookmark the LibGuide.
So we have so many questions.
Okay. Was that all 5 of my questions?
That was all 5 of them.
Oh man, that went so fast. Okay, so now we welcome your questions. And just to be clear, we are going to download this chat, sort all the questions that we don't get to, and make sure that there are answers. But many of them might be, it's on the LibGuide. It's on the LibGuide. It's March Mammal Madness's version of it's on the syllabus.
Yes.
All right. So, where do you find the trading cards? So these were created by Ian Hecht, and there is a link to them from the educator materials. So fun fact, if you are using the educator materials to teach yourself or others, then you are an educator and everybody has free access to them. They're not just for some kind of definition of educator, other than if you are engaged in learning, then you're an educator and you have access to those materials, and you can get the different versions. So if you want to go really elaborate, you can get the really high quality, each card its own file, or you can get a PDF of all of them, or you can get the research cards and have your students or yourself or your friends or your family or your coworkers or whoever you were playing March Madness with, you can do it that way.
Yes, I've been seeing, so a lot of, a lot of questions. I love how folks have been answering each other's questions in the chat.
You guys are awesome. It's the best community ever.
It really, so somebody asked if you should fill the bracket out in its entirety or just one round and then wait for results. You should fill it out all the way. I mean, you've got to, in my opinion, you could play it however you want it.
Yeah. So I would say for your high school and college and like your, more fully developed frontally lobe players, like you need to like put some skin in the game and like make a prediction about who your champion is all the way to the end, and like root for them and then root for whoever defeats them, because obviously they could have only been beaten by the best, and you play it all the way out. That's part of the fun and the camaraderie of it. If you are playing with like little kids or you know, or others that are get really disappointed by busted brackets. So we have a lot of teachers that work with special ed students or others that are learning different levels of emotion regulation and you know how we process these kinds of things. Then some teachers or some parents or some friends, or they find it really useful to do a reset after the second round. So the first round goes from 64 to 32, and then the second round goes from 32 to 16. And you can say like, hey, to keep buy-in and to keep people interested and understand maybe that their strategy for first picks wasn't the best, let's redo from the 16, you know, the Sweet 16 on. You know, like Mark Kissel and Jenna Kissel, who are team members for March Mammal Madness, one year their very young daughter picked who was going to advance based on what was cutest. And I would say that is not generally a winning selection method for your champion in March Mammal Madness, unless you also think that like big, strong, powerful, aggressive mammals are cute, in which case it could be. What the first year, Morgan Jackson, who's an entomologist and out of the University of Guelph, he picked his winners based on how big and cool their parasites were. And an elephant was a champion that year, and elephants have really big and cool parasites. So he ended up having the highest scoring bracket among the group of players on Twitter because he had, you know, like this parasite decision rule. Some people also say that it can make sense, and this is more for personal brackets, not necessarily classroom brackets, to do a heart and a head bracket. So make one bracket that you're like, okay, this is a real competitor. It's obviously gonna go far, but I also have this bracket that's full of all of my favorites. And some of your favorites might not, you know, they're gonna be like Gonzaga, right? Like they're awesome and they do well, but they are not as often typically the champion. Sorry. We can just mention basketball, given that that tournament is in part the model on which this is based.
So some folks are asking about like how to manage, like have their students do research before filling out the bracket or after filling out the bracket. There's a lot of different ways that educators have implemented the class. Some people just do fill out the bracket, but everybody's got to research a particular animal or particular division. You could spend a lot of time doing research. Like really, you could spend like all the 3 weeks until the wild card doing research if you really want to dive in there.
So there's different strategies. So if you're a teacher and you're doing it with multiple classes, you could have different classes do deep dives into each division and then make hype posters that go up on classroom walls or in hallways. You can divvy up the species among students. You can have first round matchups and team students to work together on it. In general, we don't think that you should grade them on their points and how well they've predicted, because there are upsets. About 20% of the encounters involve a worse seeded species defeating a better seeded species. And so we actually think you should, you know, encourage them to do research and then, you know, have them either research a particular combatant and then share that information with the class through a presentation or a PowerPoint slide or a poster. Or you can have them make their bracket all the way out to their champion and then argue from evidence why that champion is going to do really well. And we're gonna drop some new curricula tomorrow on ecosystems and kind of thinking about like, okay, you can have your students do a table where they take their final 4 and say, okay, you know, of these 4 species, they are going to have an advantage in this habitat relative to the other animal they might encounter, and have them kind of think contingently and integrate that complexity in a meaningful way. We create our curricular materials to tie into next generation science standards, most typically the tree of life, adaptations and traits, and ecosystems, interactions, dynamics, and impacts, and human impacts. So they'll have a lot of content. So check out the educator packet. We have assignments that they can do before the tournament starts, and then assignments that can be done during the tournament based on what the scientist narrators are saying. And we have lesson plans for life sciences, language arts, social studies, and visual arts. And the language arts and visual arts can be embedded within a science classroom, or you can partner with some of your other teachers that are teaching those courses and do things. We have entire schools that get involved, and all the teachers create assignments for their particular topic. And so students get to do a really deep dive into animals, which is something that our human minds are adapted to learn about during development. Sorry, got a little science there. Check out our eLife paper that has all of the details of the social science of why this tournament happens to tap into a number of different kinds of cognitive adaptations of the human mind.
Yeah, it's fun. So fun. I think we have time for one last question, and I'm going to, if you don't mind, there are lots of questions about the pool manager and the automatically scoring bracket. And I'm just going to mention, we don't have time to walk anybody through managing the pool. Jeff, who created the forums, has done as good a job as he can, like explaining how to do it. I think he just posted a video on Twitter, and when we see, like when I grab that after this, I'll try to post it to the library guide because I know that that can be kind of complicated because there's a lot of scary behind the scenes stuff, but it's not that hard. I can do it.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add to that and say the tournament doesn't start until March 14th. Your students are not picking their champion in the next few days. And so we'll open up the different portals so we'll get more information that Jeff's providing. Other teachers use different kinds of online scoring brackets in their way. Those are going to get into the crowdsourced materials. All of that will be linked from to the LibGuide. And so, the second week of March is really when you're going to have to really understand that, because that's when your students and other people in your contest pools, which of course have nothing to do with gambling and never have any stakes, you'll have plenty of time to get that on board. So no stress, it's all going to work out. We promise.
And I know our time is up. I know Patty's going to get ready to boot me and mute me at the moment, but really quick, there's a question. What is the festival tomorrow? I just put the link in the chat. You need to go join our all-day festival from Exploring by the Sea.
Yeah. And you can come for a single panel, so every hour, for the first 45 minutes of every hour, there's going to be different panels of different scientists and artists that are involved in March Mammal Madness. And they're going to talk about how they got interested in being an animal behaviorist or paleontologist or a scientist, other kinds of, scientists. They're going to talk about their animal adventures. They're going to talk about their career trajectories and how they got into it. And all of it's going to be recorded. So if you can't come live, it will be up and available next week. And but we have, dozens of classrooms that are signed up, and we'll be taking questions directly from students. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Anali and Katie. I know I'm excited about filling out my bracket. My heart wants to root for the bighorn sheep, but I'm not actually thinking that a 6 seed is going to go that far. So anyway, on behalf of the ASU Library, I'd like to formally extend a big thank you to Anali Perry and Katie Hinde for bringing their energy, enthusiasm, and expertise to today's community conversation. We would also like to thank all of the attendees for coming today. You'll be receiving a post-event survey, so please take a moment to fill this out and let us know if other areas of the ASU Library you're interested in, and we will be recording this and uploading it to the library guide, which is the key to all things March Mammal Madness, very soon. Thank you very much. Have a great day.